Hello again, everyone. Today I am going to show you a technique that's also another mixture of art therapy and Neurographica. And I kind of stumbled on this by accident because I was trying to do something with this piece of art here. So what you're seeing is the result of an experiment. And um, when I first tried this out, and I look at it, I was like, I find myself staring at this piece of work for a really long time. I mean, not hours, but like longer than I would look other pieces of art. I say, "Ooh, that's beautiful." This one, I was like, felt like I was a little mesmerized by all the lines and all. And then I went to look up some art therapy stuff, and apparently, what they're saying is that if you draw lines, like straight lines, on a piece of paper, you can actually it can actually help you lower your anger. Like if at the moment you're really angry, then you just draw straight lines and it will calm you down. And that has I remember some time ago that I read something that if you're angry, you're upset, um, you get pains, and then you paint with a brush, like horizontal stripes, like this way, and use only blues and greens, and you just keep doing it until you feel that anger go down, or how the level of your upset like decreases significantly. And when I was doing this, I was not angry when I was doing this, but I felt very calm when I was doing this. Like, I felt like I was flowing with the lines, literally. Like, I was actually imagining water flowing around pebbles and rocks in a river, and then occasionally you see bubbles. These bubbles, some of it are intentional, some of them are like, I felt like, well, there should be some bubbles there, and that was how this happened. So today, this is also like a little bit like Zentangles. So today, I'm going to teach you how to do this, and this can help you de-stress and release and help release your tension inside you as well. Okay? And there are some new art material requirements because I'm sure you don't want to be coloring in between all these lines. It's just too time consuming. Actually, this whole um, piece of artwork, even though it's on the A4 size, it took me about 20 hours to complete. That's not including the flattening, trying to flatten this piece of paper after I've done the background. Okay? So be prepared to spend a lot of time on this. So in the um, to shorten the time I need to do this, and for you as well, I would suggest you either do half a page or a quarter. Today, I'm actually gonna do it on a piece of postcard with that's made out of mixed media paper. This is like a 300 GSM mixed media paper by Strathmore. I'm not paid by Strathmore to do this, but I want to try this out because I was interested in getting this mixed media paper because it's 300 GSM. So it's really thick, so you can handle like water and wet media, some wet media, so it doesn't curl as much. Heavy paper to tend to curl less or warp less when you use water. So now with this piece of art, you can either use watercolor pencils, or my favorite, pastels. Pastels are like chalk. They look like this. So you can get like a small set of 12. The prices vary according to the quality of the pastels. So these are like student grade medium quality, and they're not that cheap either. Well, they're not really cheap because they're mainly pigment and binders. They're like almost pure pigment with some binder inside there to make them, you know, into chalk form. And there are two types. These are the hard pastels. They're the soft ones that are like a little bit softer than chalk. These are slightly harder than chalk. And they do tend to last. They're generally more light fast than most other coloring media, and prices range from $2 right up to like a few hundred if you get the top end ones. Um, like I'm talking Caran d'Ache pastels. They're like the top end model, and they're really expensive. These are like the middle range or top range student grade ones. So these are pretty reasonable. They're like, I think I bought these for like around 20 Singapore dollars for a set of 24. You can get the cheap ones. It doesn't really matter. Um, the cheap ones are not really very expensive. You can get the dollar store ones like in Singapore. If you can find them in Daiso, $2 for like I think 16 colors or 10 colors. I can't remember, and they work just as well. You just have less colors to pick from. And for these, because you're doing the backgrounds, you can't really mix the color. I'll explain more later when I'm doing it, okay? And the brand that you might want to look out for is this one. These are like kids grade. They're good enough, okay? And they're really cheap. They're for under like, I think I got these for like $9 or $8. I can't remember, and they are set 24. Now, having said that, be warned. These are really dusty. Very dusty. If you ever use this for coloring, they are very dusty. They generate a lot of dust. But the good thing is with this is that in art therapy, these dust, when you do painting with it, because you will be smudging with your fingers, so that feeling of fingers on this dust on the paper actually gives you a very nice soothing feeling. So whatever, if you're really upset, angry or something, it's really nice to be able to use this and then just kind of smudge it out on paper. You will get an experience of it when you're doing this for the background, because that's what you'll be doing. Okay, so if you're actually doing any coloring of any sort, don't use this brand. But if you really need to, like, need some way of soothing yourself to get rid of anger or whatever, yeah, go ahead, get these, because these are really dusty. So on top of that, you might need to get yourself either some fixative or hairspray. Okay, fixatives are a little bit more expensive, and all the fixatives are, in the manner of speaking, artist grade. So there are no cheap fixatives out there. They're kind of expensive. I can't remember how much I paid for that, but you should be able to find some in your local art stores or your craft stores. Okay, and they're not very expensive. The difference is that fixatives are formulated so that they don't yellow your paper over time. Now with hairspray, you gotta be a little bit more careful because for hairspray sometimes they have a lot of additional stuff put in there to nourish your hair and all that. So the rule of thumb is if you're going to use hairspray as fixatives, uh, try and get your hands on the cheapest brand you can, because the cheapest brands will not have any of the extra stuff that's supposed to nourish your hair. You don't need extra stuff to nourish the paper. So the thing is, hairsprays are cheaper, but they're not formulated for art. So if you're the stickler kind where you say you don't want your art to change color over time and all that, then get fixatives. Otherwise, if you're just like doing art for, if you're just doing this for quote unquote therapeutic purposes, then get hairspray. They're really cheap, you know? Like, I got this bottle, huge bottle, okay, for under $10. 10 Singapore dollars, that is. I don't know if you can get smaller bottles. You'll have to look up around the stores in your area or even online. Is if you're using hairspray, just buy the cheapest one you can get with the least amount of additives in there, or even no additives, just pure hairspray. Okay, because all you want to do is fix the colors so that you can draw on. Do not use anything like varnish or even acrylic spray, because it might mess with your markers later. You might have problems getting your markers to stick on the paper after that because it leaves like a layer that might interfere with your markers. Okay, so don't get those like acrylic clear spray or whatever. Fixatives or hairspray only, please. Alright, so and then markers, and oh yeah, before I move on to markers, you will need one of these. Okay, in I think it was it's called Nagomi Pastel Art. They have this thing that looks like this, but it's square, so it's like this big, and then you would rub your pastels out over it to get the dust to come down. Now you don't need to have this. You could just use a pen knife or something that's flat that you can scrape the pastels dust off. It's a little bit harder because you got to focus on the scraping a bit. With this, you just kind of like just do this and just move this thing around, and then the dust will just fall onto the paper, and then you can just rub it later. This is basically what I do, is I just rub the pastel on the paper like this and move this around, and then I just use my hands to rub it down. Burnish it. You can say, oh, actually no, it'll spread the color around, and this is the result. Okay, and you use very little pastel, very little. If you can see the powder going onto your paper, you might have put on a little too much. You want very little amount, like, and the results will look like this. Obviously, if you use higher quality pastels, your result, the color might come out stronger, so you need less dust on your paper to achieve the effect, as opposed to something that's cheaper. Medium grade pastels are okay. You can try the cheaper grade ones like the Reeves I mentioned earlier. Okay, so you need one of these. These are the sink traps for the sink. Okay, it's like a sieve. You can get one of these, or you can use something to scrape the pastel off. Okay, now, and then we're going to be using markers. Obviously you want fine markers, because if it's too thick, you won't get this effect. Okay, fine markers like, okay, this one that I usually use during my recording sessions. This is a little, well, when it's fresh it's okay, but when it goes blunt it might be a little too thick. Find one that's, yeah, see? So when these are new they're okay, but when they're old, like I used this the last session for filming, and they are a little thick. So you can so try to stay away from these, the bullet point ones. Get the fine point ones if you can, like micron pen. This is a plastic nib micron pen. They should be fine. Okay? Or a ballpoint pen. Any color you want. Okay, preferably something that's neutral color. So don't get red. Green's okay. Black, blue, or green is fine. Do not get red. Okay, so these are like fine also. Okay, this is the Uniball Signal Air. They're not very that expensive. They're like close to $2 per pen. These are about the same. They last a really long time. I don't know about these because these are pretty new to me, so I haven't really used these yet. But this, I kind of like bought a whole bunch of them because I was afraid that they would run out. Like I really bought a whole bunch of them. I love these so much. The Uniball Signal Air, I love them. I'm not paid by them to say this, but just to recommend you, it's like really nice pens to write on. So, alright. So we're gonna use a smaller, I'm gonna flip this over now because I'm working on it. Okay, so alright, tip here is stick to blues and greens, like cool colors, blues, greens, purples, it's fine. And you only put like a splash of like either orange or yellow, you know, to draw visual attention. You can have some pink, that's okay, because pinks, if you use a lot of blues and greens, then you put some pink on top of it, you will come out looking a little bit like purple. So they're really cool colors. They should be fine. Like this here, I use pink. I don't know, I use purple here. These I use pinks. So this patch of yellow might be a bit too large. So try not to do this. Okay? Now you want a picture that looks dreamy, looks cool, looks mesmerizing. Okay? And you don't want something that is warm and inviting. You want something that looks cool and calming. So you stick to only blues and greens. So I am going to use, now because this sheet of paper is really small, so I can't really do a lot. If you're using a larger sheet of paper, yeah, you can go to town with a lot of colors. But be reminded that if you can see splotches of dust on the paper, it's too much. Okay? Okay, you might want to keep some paper towels or wet rags nearby to wipe off your fingers later. Okay, so let's do this. So what you do is you take the pastel, if you have one of these, you just kind of rub it like that. Okay, and you see some little droplets on. If it's not enough, you can put more, but if you put too much, you can't get it off. So let me get closer so you can see. This is kind of like about how much you want to leave on when you first start. Okay. So that's kind of like how much I have on the paper to start with. You can see the little specks. Okay, this is okay. It's not too much yet. Now you just use your fingers. Okay, fingers, not finger, fingers, and just see which way you want the colors. I wanted my colors to go like this way diagonally, because remember in Neurographica we're saying left to right, top to bottom. Left to right is past, future, past, future. So if you're going diagonally, you're okay. Okay. See the colors. Okay. Now the colors are a little too light, so I'm gonna add some heavier color on. Put some more pink. Okay, I want to put a little yellow on the edges. See how soothing the color is? Okay, you might complain that, oh, you see the little grains and everything. That's fine. The grains will disappear once you draw the lines. Trust me. I promise you that. So this is how saturated it looks. It's not very saturated. Now, if you want to use more colors to be safe, stick with pastel colors. So unless you're working with like if you're working with a full bigger set, yeah, you can find pastel colors. Otherwise, just put some whites. See, let me show you what happens when you put some whites. You lighten the whole thing. Okay, this is how pastel works. Or if you want to do the Nagomi way, you can get some blue tack and start subtracting the colors out. You'll suck it out. Okay, like, let me show you. This is blue tack. So if I do you can't see it probably. But look at this spot here. It's a little bit wider than the rest of the paper. You can almost barely see it. So if you want more, just keep doing it. Okay? Because it will lift the pigment off the paper. But I don't want to do that. I like this the way it is. Okay? Alright, so the next step is, before we move on, I have to go wash my hands and spray some fixative on. Okay, so I will be back. Okay, and I'm back. I used hairspray and it dries pretty fast. It's a bit warped. So, good thing about having a small card, when it warps, it's easy to fix. But because it's 300 GSM, it doesn't warp as bad. Okay, so next step. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, if you used fixative, it's water resistant. So if you use hairspray, they're not water resistant. So with fixative, because it's all quote-unquote long-lasting chemicals, you might want to have to spray it outdoors or in a well-ventilated area. We've laid out a lot of newspapers and all. And with hairspray, you can just run to your bathroom, go into where you take a shower, and just kind of spray that piece of paper, and then just spray, and then just get a nozzle and spray down the area where you just did the spraying, and it will all come off. So that's the good thing about hairspray. But besides that, it might change your color. Actually, both fixatives and hairspray will darken your color slightly. So go light on your background. So anyways, let's continue. Now, because I have a small piece of paper as compared to this, okay, you see that I have 3 circles there, because I thought if I had only one big huge circle here, it would be kind of boring. So I added one. Now with a small piece of circle, with a small piece of paper, you may not want to have such a big circle at that many. So maybe two, the maximum, like this size. Two circles would be your maximum, and space them further apart so that you don't get stuff like this. You don't want to have too much of stuff like this. Okay, then it becomes more like Zentangles than trying to soothe yourself. Okay, so space them further apart, like maybe this distance apart. It's fine. Okay, if I were to redo this piece of artwork, I will probably have these two circles placed further apart from this one. So lesson learned, lesson applied here. So I'm gonna have a circle. You can draw any size of circle. Again, don't cheat. The only cheat you probably allowed to is use a pencil to do it, or sketch it out here first, like practice. The size of circles that you want, practice it. It probably wouldn't draw a circle this big. Probably around this size for this piece of paper is good enough. So what I want is maybe a circle here. Doesn't have to be perfect, remember that. And a circle here. You can have just one circle, it's fine too. Okay, now if you're using this pen, remember that they don't dry as fast. So if as I'm shifting my paper here, you can see the shimmering. That's from wet ink. Okay, now just now, as I mentioned, I want to draw lines this way, diagonally. You can draw lines whichever way you want, which is more convenient to you. You can draw it horizontally this way, that's fine. Because of the way I work, if I'm going to draw horizontal lines, I would have to place my paper this way and then draw this way, so it'll come out horizontal. Anyways, the decision is yours. So how we do this is now, okay, before we start drawing lines, remember it's a neurographic line. So when you draw the neurographic line, if you draw it too fast, this happens. Okay, it's very straight. But if you draw it slower, and kind of wiggle your hand a little bit, or if you draw it slow enough, the wiggling happens on its own. Okay? Unless you have rock steady surgeon hands, your lines will not be straight. It will be wiggling like a worm. Alright? So if you do have surgeon's hands, then you do have to wiggle it a little bit, just so that your line doesn't look so smooth and straight. Okay? Alright. So when you come to the circle, you want to meander around it. But you can touch the circle, that's fine. Okay, and again meander. Remember, no sharp turns. Alright, so you can do the bottom first and then do the top, but I kind of like to draw both. Okay, remember, it's like water flowing around a rock. So remember that when you're drawing this, like you feel like the lines are lines of the river flow, like water flowing around a rock. Okay, and in this case, now if you want to draw circles inside here, it's fine, little bubbles like this, remember? Oh, sorry. Yeah, like these little bubbles here. Okay, these. In fact, it's encouraged because you don't want this huge open space here so much. Size of bubbles, you decide. You can have big, you can have small. Just remember, imagine like you're watching this and then you have to do the roundings here too. Okay? Just remember, it's like if you were watching, you know, a stream flowing, sometimes you see bubbles forming around stones and rocks. That's how it should look like. Kinda. Okay? Something like that. Then you continue. Remember to join your lines to the edge of the paper. And keep going. Okay, and you can vary the distance between each line. Make sure the lines don't touch, or they can barely touch each other, that's fine. And you can change the arc of the curve, like over here. You could just do this. And when I do that, I tend to want to put bubbles here. I call them little bubbles. Okay, that's how I do it. So you continue drawing slowly, letting your hand do the wiggling most of the way. Sometimes you do have to do it because over time your hand tends to become really steady and you see an almost straight line. So remember, we're trying to get neurographic lines here, so it shouldn't be too straight. So you can use a ballpoint pen to do this as well because they're pretty fine, or even a rollerball pen, any type of rollerball pen that you like. Okay, and you see that maybe this meets here, but leave it because You can try to round it a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, don't go overboard with it. Just do it slowly and your hand will do the rest of the work to make it a neural line. Okay, I'll bring it closer so you can have a look. Okay, see it? So it is because you have to draw all these lines to fill up the whole piece of paper, that's what's taking up a lot of time. So, and it's okay to take a break whenever, because you're not doing any algorithm here. Take a break whenever, and then continue, you know. If you're using an A4 sheet of paper, you probably either be doing it the whole entire day to try and finish it, or you can break it up into a few sessions. Okay, and your finished artwork will look really mesmerizing. Alright? Now let's assume that I want to add some bubbles here. Okay? And look, like usually the way I add bubbles is I see there's like huge openings here. I'll just go in and add some bubbles. Okay? And then round that area out. So like here, there's a difference in the gap. I feel like I want to add some bubbles there. So you can create opportunities to add bubbles like this. I'll show you here. I'll make one example here on purpose, and you will see how I do it. Okay, so like here, I'll purposely make it a bit bigger than okay. So this is where I add some bubbles. Okay. So moving on, when I do this, I want to put one bubble there, so I made a space for it. So I have a space for bubble here. Okay, and maybe a couple here. Remember to breathe as you're doing this, because you find yourself focusing on drawing the lines, and you forget to breathe, or your breathing becomes really shallow because you slip into this meditative state. So remember to breathe deep. Okay, you see how I made variations in the line at the bottom there? So you're seeing how it takes shape now. So I am going to fast forward the video from here onwards. Unless I have something to talk about, then I would pause and say something about it. Okay? Alright. So there we go. I'm done with this piece. This took about some around 2 hours, slightly less than 2 hours for this small piece. So if you multiply this by 4, that's, well, around how long it'll probably take for an A4 size. And if you go A3, A2, it's even longer. That's how much time you have to spend. It's very time consuming, but also very relaxing, because you really do get into this quiet, focus state of mind, which you're not thinking of anything else except, where you want to put the bubbles and all. uh, you can leave this piece like this as it is, or you can add colors to it. Okay, like what I did with this piece here, by adding all these colors and some of the bubbles there. Okay, these are like, I used pastel pencils and pastels to create this effect. Alright, so I don't know how you feel about this. I hope it is as calming to you as it was to me, because now that I'm looking at this piece, it's like, yeah, I find myself being attracted to the lines. It's like I'm one with the lines and I'm flowing with it. And it's very mesmerizing. I kind of love it. In hindsight though, I may have wanted to put a bit more orange here to attract attention, but if not, everything else is okay. I do like it, not as well as the bigger piece, maybe because it's bigger. So hopefully it will be of some use to you, and I will talk to you again in the next video. Bye!